I think the very worst 2 years of poaching that we ever had was from the start of COVID going 2 years in. When we first started hunting here, the poaching wasn't a huge threat to us then. We would still employ game scouts, which basically patrolled the areas unarmed. They would only carry machetes and axes, typically groups of 6 to 8 game scouts in a team. And they would fall under the supervision of the PH that was hunting in that area. That was adequate at that time. But as the poaching increased, it became clear that we would need to increase the numbers of our scouts. And not only that, because the poachers now were more and more armed, we had to start employing military to accompany our game scouts, because you can't expect game scouts who are carrying machetes to arrest gangs of armed poachers. So we've now started hiring military personnel to accompany our game scouts. There's pretty much no industry in Northern Cameroon, so getting work is extremely difficult. The main cash crop here in the north is cotton, and people raise some livestock, but that's about it. And the population just keeps increasing and increasing and increasing. You'll drive through the villages and there's just people sitting around under trees. And I think the increase in population is also the main reason why the poaching has increased. In each concession, the area most affected in that concession is always the area that's closest to the villages. Even though the villages may be 20 or 30 kilometers away, people have nothing to do, they're going to walk that distance. And in some places they can even access close to the concession by road using these cheap Chinese motorcycles. They get dropped off, they'll poach. When they have enough meat, with cell phones nowadays, they make a call, the meat gets picked up, it gets moved out. So we'll deploy scouts in the most threatened areas. Patrols are typically 5 days to a week long with military personnel. The military gets changed every sort of week or so. So every week the position of the scouting is changed. So typically the poachers will shoot an animal, skin it, cut the meat up, carry the meat back to their base camp, and then there they will rack it. They'll build meat racks where they'll build fires underneath and they smoke the meat. That way it's cured and it's also way lighter to carry, and there's not blood and stuff like that everywhere. So when they have enough dried meat, that's when they'll normally ship it back to the villages or wherever they're going to sell that meat. It's rare that they'll poach and carry out fresh meat. It does happen, especially the concessions that are near a main road. That does happen, but mainly it's drying the meat first. In this concession in particular, we have a public road that runs almost through the center of the area. That is a huge weak point for us. It's very easy for poachers to come in and carry meat out, and there's no one to control the movement on that road, so it's very easy access for the poachers. The main market for the poached meat is the villages and the bigger towns. We've caught poachers here that are from Mayo Oldiri, which is about 150 kilometers from here. It's a big town. It's probably the second biggest town in the north of Cameroon. So that meat will find its way there by motorcycle and be sold on the markets there. So initially, our communication here was solely satellite phones. There was nothing else. I've never seen a landline in this country, and there were no cell phones in the capital, some of the big cities. But out here, I don't think we had cell phone service until about 2014. If I'm correct, I think that was about the first time there was limited cell phone service. Now, there's pretty good coverage in most of the areas, and that also worked in the favor of poachers. They could call in transport to pick up meat, get information, even possibly from people that work in the hunting areas. So that created another problem for us. So when COVID hit us, we were actually at the end of our season that year, and obviously the whole world shut down, including Cameroon. The future was very uncertain at that point. The poaching was rife, and obviously now our entire forest season was cancelled. There was no income, so we had to decrease our numbers of anti-poaching personnel. And I think the very worst 2 years of poaching that we ever had was from the start of COVID going 2 years in. Obviously, as soon as the hunts were able to resume, we re-employed more scouts again and management for that.
Votre position parlez.
Our second biggest issue here, apart from the poaching, is encroachment by the nomad cattle herders that move with huge numbers of cattle freely between the Central African Republic, Nigeria, Chad and Cameroon, even going into the Congo. And this is a nomadic tribe that move with big herds of cattle, sheep, goats. Back in countries like Zimbabwe, we have a campfire system where the community benefit directly from the hunting area. Those are communal areas. They're not set aside safari concessions as such as these are. So I don't think that model would really work here because firstly, we don't have elephant anymore to hunt, which is the main meat source in those campfire projects. And we don't shoot the volume of buffalo either that would support such a program. So I don't think the campfire system would work here in Cameroon.